take over. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Rombak Dialogue Sessions. I'm Salbin. I'm very happy to be here to continue our series of discussion in conjunction for this symposium and online exhibition that we are hosting at the Multimedia University, co-organized by the Faculty of Cinematic Arts and the Faculty of Creative Multimedia. All right. Today's session that we are continuing the second dialogue is called Rombak Dialogue: Banalities as a Catalyst in Our Creative Practice. Okay. Also, this extension of a banality, the theme of banality is in fact picked up from our online exhibition, which we invite artists working in moving images as well as digital art and other forms of contemporary art form for a submission exhibition. And so today I have two guests or two panelists. One is actually my colleague, Mr. Ghazi Alqudcy from the Faculty of Cinematic Arts, and also Mr. Ezzam Rahman, okay, whom I would like to congratulate for his appointment as the new artistic director of the Substation, a very important arts institution in Singapore. So welcome to both Ezzam and Ghazi.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So before we go on, firstly, I just like to read out the profile of our esteemed panelists. So Ezzam Rahman is an art educator, multidisciplinary installation and performance artist based in Singapore. Ezzam is known for his interest in the body and his use of common, easily accessible, and unconventional materials to produce works. So through this work that Ezzam has done, he features narratives that challenges and expands the notion of identity politics, the inherent paradoxes of presence and marginality. So most of his works are autobiographical, time-based ephemerals that aim to pique the viewer's thoughts on the topics of impermanence, trace, and objection. Well, in fact, you can see one of his video or performance, video with performance, right, in the Rombak exhibition. But let me continue. So Ezzam was awarded the joint winner of the Grand Prize for the President's Young Talents 2015 and the People's Choice Award by the Singapore Art Museum. He was also awarded the Go Chok Tong Youth Promise Award by Yayasan Mendaki and the prestigious Young Artist Award by the National Arts Council Singapore in 2016. So he was one of the participating artists that presented Singapore Inside Out in Sydney, Australia, organized by the Singapore Tourism Board 2017 and 2018. Ezzam was invited by the Frieze Art Fair in London to be part of Frieze Symposium in a panel discussion on a brief history of performance in Southeast Asia. I believe this will be something interesting that is connected to our team that we'll be looking into. And Ezzam have been involved with 3 cycles of Open House, Holland Village in 2017, Passport in 2019, and Season 2, The Distance Between Us, Days _ and Counting in 2021. Whereas my colleague, Ghazi Alqudcy, holds a Master of Fine Art in Filmmaking from Film Factory, an intensive program created by the Hungarian film director Bela Tar. He has produced more than 55 short films, which screened at various film festivals in Europe and Asia. In 2014, he produced a feature-length omnibus documentary, Lost in Bosnia, a collective poem about the act of filmmaking at a critical and film historical moment. Ghazi's directorial debut feature film, Temporary Visa, was awarded Best Film in the Discovery section at the Asian Film Festival in Barcelona, and he's currently lecturing at the Faculty of Cinematic Arts at MMU. Right. So great to have both of them here. But how we will begin is that we will begin with presentation by Ezzam, and then followed by Ghazi, and then we could actually talk about some of the ideas and also the question we have in terms of how the notion of banalities or um, uninterestedness, mundaneness, or so on and so forth, how can such notion or such element be a catalyst to inspire or to stir artists to continue or keep on making something interesting? In a way, how do we derive or actually extract or in respond to this kind of condition of this value? So, without further ado, Ezam, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Salbin, for that introduction. Thank you, Ghazi, for inviting me and to be part of Rombak this cycle. Hi, everyone. I'm Ezzam Rahman. I am a multidisciplinary artist first. So, in this series of slides, I'm going to show you the kind of works that I've been dealing with. And basically, a lot of my works deals with the idea of politics and also the politics of body or body in politics. Slide. As I've mentioned, I do consider myself in these areas. I'm actually formally trained as a sculptor, so I make miniature sculptures. I do performance art, installation art, and I'm also an arts educator um, in different arts institutions here in Singapore. This is one of the materials that I commonly use in my sculptures. If you can make a guess, Salvin, you want to guess?
That's, that looks like a peel from some pomelo or some citrus fruits. Or is that so? Or something that dries
No.
up actually?
Slide. Thank you for the guess, but it's actually off my feet. I harvest my own skin, so every 30 days I will peel them off and I will um, pack them and use them in my works. It has been a habit of mine uh, to groom myself and also keep myself presentable. I am a type of person who can't keep my nails long. Um, and it started how I started using this material. I call it material. Was since 2008. Slide. So in 2015, I was invited by the Singapore Art Museum to be, and I was one of the nominated artists for the President Young Talent, and I presented the series of works entitled "Here's Who I Am, I'm What You See." It's a series of miniature sculptures made out of my own skin, the calluses that I peel off my feet, and I turn them into floral pieces. But of course, they take in other forms too. Slide. So in this series of works, if you take a look, there are actually 34 miniature sculptures, all embedded in Beljas and installed in one of the galleries in 8Q. When the visitors entered the space, um, a lot of the comments that I received were just, "Oh, okay, put puri in Beljas," but how it was curated was you don't give yes, you see the installation in the space, but as you walk out, the write up and the medium description is actually facing the other wall near to the exit space. So when the audience walk towards the exit, they read about the materials and they decided to go back and take a closer look. So a lot of my works have that kind of subtle direction and redirection for the audience to take a look at the artwork and give it a second chance. In 2019, the Singapore Art Museum approached me again to actually create a second iteration of the same work. So, this is the work that I presented in three different regional libraries in Singapore because the Singapore Art Museum is undergoing a major renovation. So, one of the programs was actually to bring the arts to the public. Hence, the Singapore Art Museum worked very closely with the region, with the libraries, and for this second iteration, I was also the second artist to be part of Sam Mini Mobile Museum, and it ran from 2019 to 2020. In this series of works, the title is There Any Way I Can Be in Your Arms? Um, Consists of, again, found, no, secondhand furniture. If you take a look, there are three different beds, different sizes, a baby's crib, a single bed, and also a queen size bed. And inside these beds are actually a little diorama made out of depleted anti-inflammation balm, used plasters, my own skin and nails. Slide. So this is another angle of the artwork. So the audience are invited to actually explore and take a closer look again to give the artwork a chance to take a closer look at it. Slide. These are some of the details of the diorama inside the bits. So when you take a look inside uh, the presentation, there are actually multiple objects being embedded, and there are not only flowers, but there are also creatures such as spiders and dragonflies, and even a bird being um, what do you call that, sculpted out of my own skin. There you go. So as I sculpt my own skin, it also take form in other what do you call that, features. Slide. In 2019, I was also a part of a group exhibition at Force Gallery at Gilman Barracks, and here I presented a two series of works that actually kind of like work hand in hand together. How I Can Give You All of Me When I'm Only Half a Man is actually a series of skin sculptures that take form of vessels, and these vessels are a coffee mug, a sake cup, and also a Chinese tea cup. Slide. Apart from that, I to complement the sculptures, I also did a series of performative photograph or photographs, performance for photograph, drawing inspiration from everyday objects um, as a catalyst for to create relationship between the body and everyday objects. In this series of works, it also talks about broken relationships, and also it talks about how can you reconcile a relationship. So when somebody um, go through tough times, what will you do? You will invite the other party and say, hey, let's go for a drink. And therefore that slang, let's go for a drink, became an inspiration for me to create this series of works. Why the foam on the mouth? It's also a slang, like I like when you're having a conversation and you try to get your ideas across to a point that like your saliva starts foaming at the side of your lips, and therefore I kind of like extended that and amplified that bodily action or that bodily reaction in this series of photographs. Slide. This is a closer look of how the three vessels look like. Of course, in the photographs, I perform with the objects, and the objects are standalone pieces. Slide. Apart from that, I also had a second presentation. I should have kissed you when when we were alone. It's a live performance piece that I created in the gallery, where I perform with 39 ceramic mugs, using again the idea of using everyday objects as materials for my performative actions. Slide. So part of the performance was to use a mortar and pestle and to ground these ceramic mugs back into its original form, to go back to powder, to go back to earth, because ceramics are made out of clay and I wanted to bring it back to clay. This work is actually about regret, the idea of, again, broken relationships and I should have kissed you when we were alone. It's really that sense of guilt and regret, and the act of breaking these objects and going it back to its original state became a metaphor for it. If you take a look at the on the side where I was like sitting on the stool and I was pounding the ceramic pieces. Throughout it is actually a durational piece, and halfway during the performance I actually broke the pestle. And hey, not bad, I'm quite strong, I can break stone, you know. So so the pestle broke into half, and I had a little accident. I don't believe in like having blood in performances, but when I was about to stand, I accidentally stabbed my hand through a small ceramic shard, and I ended up hurting myself. So throughout the whole performance, I had to navigate with my body and react with the function of the objects, and how I can actually continue performing. Slide. So these are the remnants of the artwork. At the end of the two presentations, I presented the objects as is, and I'm quite lucky that these objects were actually collected. Very honored because as a performance artist, because it's real time, real space, everything that is done during that period of time, if you missed it, if you missed it, you can only experience it through documentation, through photo or video documentation, or through the relics or through the remnants, the performance objects that are left behind. Thank you. Slide. So in 2020, earlier last year, I decided to extend the same idea. What I need may not what I want from you. Um, it was the launch of Canvas House. It was by Figment plus Ministry of Design. Over here, I perform with 80 ceramic spoons, and again the same action to break it back, to break the ceramic spoons and return it back to its original form, which is powder form. Please don't be alarmed. This is not white face. It's an aesthetic choice. I wanted to blend within the space because the whole space was so wide, and it was my aesthetic vision. But I made a mistake. I forgotten my feet. So now my feet is like so jarring, like it's so brown, and everything is just so white. Slide. And again, I like what I mentioned earlier, I hate having blood in performances. I think it's a cheap gimmick, it's just a spectacle. But for performances, it happened in real time, real space. Mistakes are bound to happen, and some works are meant for mistakes. I did a miscalculation again, but this time around I had a marble um mortar and pestle and slightly smaller than the previous one. Um, I placed my hand over it, and when I was like pounding the one of the spoon snapped and it went through my this part of the um my hand, and it started saying hello to me, and it's supposed to be like a 5 hours performance that I had to stop after 20 minutes. And again, the materials are reacting towards my body, and my body is giving me the information to either continue a performance, to realize the work or not. And for this work, I had to take care of my body, and therefore I had to stop it after 20 minutes. So I could not realize it. I could not realize this artwork. Slide. So this is the part where I felt very defeated. I said, okay, should I continue? Because if I continue, I will continue bleeding, and I will might even aggravate the wound and make it even worse than it is. So I had to make an executive decision that next time please wear socks because like your feet right now is too dark. But anyways, slide. During the COVID period last year, I shifted my performance practice to more performative, more performance for photography and performance for video. So in Singapore, we had the circuit breaker or the CB period, and this was I think like earlier earlier of the year, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, it was just like a year ago, but like it seems that like we have been living in this condition forever. In closeness for me, there is distance for you is where um my this is exactly before the circuit breaker where we cannot see each other. So I decided to create this series of photographs in a domestic space. Again, relationship between the body and spaces and our everydayness, right? So I worked with another body, my working partner. So both of us. So I conceptualized the idea of how can we show despair and um unpredictedness and solace at the same time and fear um in in relationship to the distance that we are facing um, during this pandemic. And this was really, really early before the circuit breaker happened in Singapore. And I presented it online for an online exhibition with initiated by Instinct Space with Artsy. Slide. And then, as time passes by, the work that you are seeing in Rombak, I presented the video work, the performative video. I bet you do not want to read the truth from what I have written. It was actually exhibited earlier last September here in Singapore in Objectives, a place where they promote video and also photography. In this exhibition, the artists were challenged to actually turn photograph and video works into a sculptural piece. And if you notice, there are actually pictures of hands, and these are actually printed on acrylic, embedded in resin, and installed using all these tools. Um, the work that you are experiencing in Rombak is just me washing a towel for 12 minutes. And we'll talk more about the work as we go on during the discussion later. Slide. At the same time, in 2020 and 2021, if you notice, again, my work have shifted towards photography and video works. This work, you are just going to stand there and watch me burn, is actually um, a video piece where I stitch my own fit, taking homage from a Brazilian feminist artist by the name of Leticia Parente, where she actually stitched the word "made in Brazil" at the bottom of her foot. But for me, I ended up stitching the word "minority" at the end of the bottom of my foot, and the work is again responding towards the chaos during the pandemic period from last year with Black Lives Matter and a lot of like hate towards different culture and religion, and there's a lot of chaos in America with people hating Asians, and I was very badly affected. And there were also news that's circulating here in Singapore, and it affected me, and therefore I decided to do this performance for video. It was actually a 2 hour performance that I had to condense it up to only 19 minutes. And the work that you see on the wall is actually a write up by one of the curators from Singapore Art Museum who actually responded to the work. And the remnants, which is like a very small piece of the skin that I managed to salvage with the stitching, with the embroidery of minority on the skin, and the tools that I used, the needles, the thread, and also the pair of scissors. Slide. These are the pictures are not clear because they are actually screenshots from the video, and I actually stitched myself very slowly, very carefully, meticulously too, and the words were actually stitched on my feet, at the bottom of my feet. Slide. this work, just a tiny part of You Is All I Need, is my new series of works. And still going back to the idea of skin, if you notice, there's a lot of about the body. And when the Singapore Art Museum approached me in 2020 to actually again make another iteration of the PYT artwork, um, and this work were realized. This work are actually made out of faux and also genuine leather. They are specifically made for people with who are visually impaired. And I think it's a beautiful program. It's called the Sam Touch Collection by the Singapore Art Museum, and the visually impaired audience get to experience art, and they get to touch art, and it's something so dear to me. Is because that my mom lost her eyesight on her right eye because of glaucoma for the past 20 years. So she can't see through her right eye. And when I was invited, I said, hell yes, I'm going to do this because it's the only way as an artist for me to give back to the community, and everybody should experience art. Slide. And also the act of experiencing the artwork became performative. This is not a glass jar. This is actually a very thick cookie acrylic jar where the anyone can lift up the artwork, feel it, install it, close it. So even it's very calculated. The experience that I wanted the audience to understand how I think as an artist when I'm installing an artwork or when I'm doing a performance piece. So even the actions are calculated. Slide. This is one of the newer work that I've created. So I extended the idea of still using faux leather and also genuine leather, and I created this work. They'll love me when I'm dead. When I am dead. I was doing research about different pandemics. So in the 1300s in Europe, I cannot specifically tell you exactly where this plague had happened. There were a lot of people who perished during this period, and and because it's during autumn and winter time, there's not a lot of flowers. So a lot of flowers. So when somebody departed, they needed to decorate the coffin with flowers. So there's no fresh flowers. So a lot of the women went back home, took old coats and old boots, cut it into small pieces, did an assemblage and a flower bouquet made out of genuine leather. And these are not recorded in history because a lot of these bouquets, okay, during that period, the bouquets has been recycled from one funeral to another funeral and being placed as a gift to the departed during that period. And a lot of these bouquets did not survive over time, of course, 1300s, but some that had actually survived are not recorded or not collected by museum, but they are collected by oddity collectors or like antique collectors, because the when you know that this bouquet is actually a gift for the departed, so it's a bit morbid. And now it's at Esplanade, at Jandela Gallery. Slide. um Slide. So these are, so I decided to recreate that using that same idea. And because we are going through the pandemic, I know that like the past 2 years, a lot of the works, the pandemic kind of like affected me, yes, of course. But at the same time also, there is a relationship between my body, my skin, now trying to make another layer of another skin work, but like using other skin. And these faux leather and also genuine leather are not fresh leather. They are actually scraps from um what do you call that, from factories. So I'm also very particular on what kind of materials that I want to use. I try to reuse. As a sculptor, I cannot make big works here in Singapore because I do not have the space, I cannot store them, and therefore miniature works and the best strategic way for me to create my works and present it. Slide. So these are some of the close-up of the flowers that I've created. Slide. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Isam. Very
Thank you.
interesting. Is always a pleasure to have artists to tell them, tell you their work, and just going through all the visuals. A few things I have in have in my thoughts, but maybe we can talk about that later as well. But I think I like the idea of whole oscillating between the skin and be taking form as a sculpture, and then when the ceramics is going to return to where it comes from, how it then that idea of the what's bound and surround us and taking form as something else. Perhaps that we can connect to the discussion of the mundane, the everythingness, the everydayness, or the banal, and how we mix something special out of it as an artistic statement. But before we do that, now maybe we should listen to Ghazi as well and see what Ghazi would like to offer us. Ghazi?
Thank you so much, Ezzam, for that wonderful performance. Let me
Performance?
lecture.
That was
It can be a
that was
performance,
definitely a Freudian slip, which I
but
love.
that can be a performance.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
We are it's always performative, isn't it?
Yes. Uh, Let me just share a little bit about an introduction into the journey of my filmmaking process. Filmmaking process, we take a longer period of time to make a film. Like for instance, my latest feature film took me about 5 years to complete, slightly more than 5 years. So rather than showing a bit of works, I would like to share a different perspective, perhaps the journey on how I reach into a state where I enjoy so much making films right now, which I call my filmmaking practice. So I guess Sobin has read this, and I don't need to write. But yes, I have been making a lot of short films. I consider myself as a machine at one period of time, especially during my bachelor. By then, I've already completed around 50 short films. But there was a turning point for me in evaluating, my creative process, my filmmaking process, when I did my master's. And here is a picture of myself with my classmates. You can see it's actually a very boutique, radical film school. You can see in the middle there, Belata, the Hungarian maestro filmmaker. Just beside us is Api Chapong Wera Setakul, the director for Memoria. So there's 10 master students and 10 PhD students. And what we did was every 2 weeks, Bella will invite a lot of his friends. So for instance, Api Chapong will come for 2 weeks. So it's a block class. For 2 weeks, Api Chapong is supposed to teach anything other than film. So we were taught how to meditate with Api Chapong. We were taught how to exercise with Gail Garcia Bernal, and a lot of other friends of his from the industry includes, Tilda Swinton to Julia Binoche to even, Gus Van Sant and many other great directors. So it became a playground for us to find our own voice. He didn't want to replicate mini Bellatas. He wanted us to find our own voice. And personally, I owe it a lot to this collective of Film Factory, because that's where we support each other, and I found the way of how I enjoy making films. Um, just sharing with you, in my first semester, while doing my masters, I did gave him a piece of script, a 5-page script, and I remember clearly, Belata being my mentor, he read the first half of the first page, and he threw it away, and he says, "What kind of nonsense is this? Why are you fabricating life?" And literally, I can see like a slow motion film, my script, falling apart, all the way from his window. He told me one thing: go and have a holiday, and go get out of my sight right now. So I shared this with my friend, and he did tell me, why don't you come and stay with them in Germany? And I just tried to, record myself, my, everyday things that I do, walking, the cars, people eating, people sleeping, me cooking, and I got interested in that. And through that film, what surprised me was I did a 20-minute so-called travel video without any sense of narrative. It was just images, um, together with a voiceover of me in Malay, and I had no subtitle. And to my surprise, with this non-narrative, a bit of experimental documentary, without even understanding the language, I showed it to Belata, and he said, "Yes, I understand. What's the purpose of this?" And he can even remember, like, please go to the this minute. I really like this person cooking, and out of this banality of like everydayness of what people do, people can actually carve out a story. And this film called Langkah Bodoh Sapi Gemuk, which is only 20 minutes, went to a lot of festivals. It went to Rotterdam, it went to Yamagata, it went to a few places. And I find that, wow, there's such beauty in just documenting the everydayness. Because whenever we talk about film, we are always accustomed to the kind of film that we see in in Hollywood system, big superheroes, a grand structure for storytelling, and here I am, a filmmaker who just not interested in all this, interested in just the mundaneness of life and being appreciated and celebrated in some festivals. So later, I had this iPad, and I brought along to Sarajevo, where I was doing my masters, and I was interested to share this whole process, where I want every filmmaker, every friend of mine, to basically share a little bit about the process of filmmaking. And to my surprise, it became an omnibus, a 95 minutes documentary experimental omnibus called Lost in Bosnia. Uh, it was just 14 to 15 filmmakers just trying to tell their daily life on how they make films through the perspective of, like, the everydayness, or how they go to the market. And again, to my surprise, this is where, if you have read uh, the word Lost in Bosnia, a collective poem about the act of filmmaking at a critical film historical moment. This particular statement was not written by me, but it was actually written by CPH Docs Film Festival, Copenhagen, documentary by the curator, where he finds it as an interesting piece, to just showcase the life of these very important 14 filmmakers at that very film historical moment, because the entire films community understood that Belata opened a film school in Sarajevo, and these filmmakers are up, to have people ought to have to pay attention to. And the films in Lost in Bosnia, like I said, mentioned earlier, it's nothing more than just how all these 14 filmmakers live their life. And again, to our surprise, Lost in Bosnia was responded, or was appreciated, where it traveled to a lot of big film festivals other than Copenhagen. It was in Sarajevo Film Festival, it was in Hong Kong International Film Festival, the Singapore International Film Festival, to name some. And we felt that, wow, even daily life, exploration of daily life in cinema can be celebrated. I was a bit confused in trying to find out how to, continue making my study about for my master's program. The original proposal for my master's program is to identify, the portrayal of men and women. I've always been interested in having just two characters in my films, even before doing my master's. and it became clear to me when I met these two couple called Jakub Salihovic and Amira Spaho. Jakub, a little bit about Jakub Salihovic. Jakub is a 21, 22-year-old boy who his family left Bosnia 21 years ago. So he was born in UK. His family left Bosnia because of the war. He grew up in UK, and right after his graduation, he decided to come back to Sarajevo just to visit his hometown and to see his roots. Just a little bit of info: Bosnia just finished war 20 to 25 years ago. They are not part of EU, thus it makes Jakub difficult to stay in Sarajevo. Which means that he has to go back every 3 months, and he cannot overstay. And during his first stay, he met this lady called Amira Spaho, who is also about a year younger than him, and he fell in love with this girl. And I met Jakub and Amira in a very dodgy bar in Sarajevo, and they were telling me this story. Jakub said that I met this girl. Now I do not know how to leave Sarajevo. If I leave, I have to come back after 2 to 3 months. Tend to only know that I'm gonna stay here for 2 to 3 more months. So I told them that, wow, your life is so beautiful. Let's make a film. And it took a day for them to think. Of course, in Sarajevo, here you have a fat Asian director trying to make use of two Bosnian. They have to be worried about this. So to my surprise, the day after that, they came back to me and they said something so beautiful that I told myself, I need to document their life. They said they agreed to participate in a filmmaking process with me because they are scared that if anything happens to their love, at least it's captured, it's mortalized in this film, and they can actually look back at it. And that brought me to the idea of I have to document their love. And the first film I made was The Trams, the Mountains, and the Family Photo. It's a very simple 10 minutes video film where they walk around, and I just want to experience them trying to go through places and understand each other body connection. So for example, let me check. Okay, no, it's not in there, but when Jakub hugged Amira, what is her reaction? When Amira starts to sit beside Jakub, what does he do next? So it became an observational piece for me to better understand them, because not only am I an outsider for the three of us, I'm also an outsider based outside from culture, because Asian culture and European culture is totally different. And even though we know love is love, but how you express it perhaps is different. So after making this 10 minutes workshop, a 10 minutes film, the film The Trams, the Mountains, and the Family Photo, I decided to attempt on another film called Temporary Visa. The word temporary visa is basically the life of Jakub, where he can only apply for a temporary visa to stay in Sarajevo. But I told them that after learning all this, I'm very interested in the idea of exploring daily tension in cinema, in a portrayal of daily tension in cinema. So what I did with them before even attempting the script was to have a year workshop with them. I will meet them every week, and at every week they will have to come up with 10 play cards. And in each play cards, each of them will have to write, for instance, I wake up and I wanted to boil the coffee, and I accidentally touched the kettle while it's burning, and I have a blister. That's one. So for a year, every 1 or 2 weeks, they have to share with each other, all three of us. inclusive of me. I mean, for me, I think it's better for me to participate, to show them also that I'm very interested in this film. And we have hundreds of play cards after that. What I did was basically to choose all this from these play cards and rearrange them, those tensions that I really like, rearrange them in a particular order, and just write a kind of simple treatment based on the play cards. And in the end, when I gave them the treatment, they said that, wow, all of this happens in our daily life. What I did was just trying to put a bit of drama, which is not really drama because it's basically his life. He has to go and apply for a temporary visa. The story is basically Jakob, who has overstayed in Sarajevo, had to apply a temporary visa within 5 days. And applying for temporary visa is not cheap in Sarajevo because it requires at least 500, close to 500 US dollars. And he doesn't have money at a period of time. So he tries to find money. It's a 5 days film. It's a film set in 5 days where he tries to go and find money for a temporary visa. And all the scenes basically are, little pockets of their life that they have done and they have, gone through. And knowing, I told them that, the only person to be good for playing these two roles are yourself. And that's where temporary visa was born. It's 123 minutes. It was acted by both of them as though it was shot in a very documentary format, but it's a fiction film. And it won the best film in Discovery. A Discovery section is for those first-time filmmaker in a film festival in Barcelona. So to me, that's a process that I really like. I really like to get to know people and tell their stories. And I try my best to use, to let people use myself as the director, as a camera to document their mundaneness. And and always for me right now, as years goes by after my masters, it gets me stronger to think that the audience of my films are never the audience now. Because to me, I strongly believe that my pockets, little pockets of stories becomes an anthropological study for audience 100 years down the road, offering them to, I won't say truth, but what have had happened at this period of time, at this period of location. And then I came back to Singapore. I was very busy trying to pay off my loan, trying to work, and there are some short films that I did. And I told myself, I found a way of making films that I really like. I need to continue making that. So I decided to make a story that I was very inspired by, just a relationship for about like myself and my mother, where, I was busy working and she was constantly at home. And what she wished was like, we have a more bonding session. So I made this film called Doa Ma, and instead of me acting in it, I try to find people who to act for me, non-professional actors. In this case, for Miss Jamila, what you see here in front of you, um, that fits the role of my mother and myself. So I invited a friend of mine called Farah, who acted as the daughter inside this film called Doa Ma. She she faced the same. We've talked about this, and she faced a bit of similar situation. She's constantly busy. Her relationship with her mom is, there's a disjoint, and a lot of things I am able to relate. So I tweaked the film. Although the initial idea was, about my relationship with my mom, I tweak it to fit that. I guess because it's in the end, what I wrote is just a semi-fictional story, but what they have in their life is greater. So Doama, what you see here is just a story about an old lady trying to prepare a birthday party for her daughter. But what she does is just going down the staircase, going up the staircase to go to the market, to go. There's no tension. There's nothing. But along, while seeing her going down the staircase, you feel the pain because she's trembling. She's 60-year old. She's trembling coming down even just a flight of staircase. And with that, as I said, I love hearing people's story. I enjoy telling people's story. I love the idea of mundaneness. Maybe that's why I don't see myself fitting into trying to show my films in commercial release. But that's my humble practice, and it's a very simple process. I enjoy, and I wish that more people will come to me and say that I would love to have my story being told, and I'll be more than happy to document it. Yes.
Thank you very much, Ghazi.
Yes.
Now I get to understand, your fascination with this whole thing about mundaneness, about something that maybe they know the idea that banal is something negative, but yet you seem to see something poetic out of it, or that true, in a sense, the cinematographer's gaze and framing, that you want to find something beautiful out of it, derive something meaningful out of that, in that sense. And so, in contrary to a lot of perhaps perception from people that oh, this is just a normal thing. Why do we want to look into that? Why do we need to make a film out of it and things like that? And I think this is quite similar. I mean, at least if I read it that way, with Ezzam's, the idea of using part of our body, things which is actually basically is dying, dead skin flake and things like that. And I like the word, Ezzam, you were saying you harvest your own skin. It's just like we are harvesting a cryptocurrency nowadays. You're harvesting your own body to make something meaningful. In a way, it depends on who, right? For the museum, for the artists, for the curators, they see something different. But for the audience, it could be quite shocking after when they come to realization in the sense. So the idea of realization works quite differently for both of you as well. But what I want to get to is this, and I find it very important that when we talk about banality, everydayness, okay, or in fact, is the idea of time. I think the idea of time actually plays in both your work in a very different way, because I like you talking about temporary visa. Is actually addressing a kind of a liminal state of Yakub, that he can't. Where is he going to go? Stay for love, or stay for survival, or leave, or whatever. So he has to make that decision. But yet you provide that opportunity. You allow yourself, by being part of it, for them to connect, and something that can uh, immortalize that very short relationship. Hopefully, they still continue. But I think that idea of temporal element works in both Ezzam's and Ghazi's. In the sense of the duration of harvesting the mundane, the duration of transforming an ordinary gesture, the ordinary moment, the duration not of the people you work with, but the duration you spend on your material. And this material is part of your body or part of someone's body. For example, Ezzam was actually working with the hide and skin, the leather that which is extracted from other beings, right? And Ghazis, you're actually extracting, in a sense, a long duration of taking things from others. I'm curious, how do you endure yourself with this duration? I'm really, really curious right now. I mean, this is like, um, it is. If I say it's worse than a long distance relationship, because you are having a long distance, long durational relationship with yourself, seeing others, dealing with others, harvesting yourself, transforming that, and the rehashing that by reversing. For example, I'm thinking is Izzam's the ceramic work, by reversing that, which takes long time for it to form. Why? Because this is a question that there's a durational thing, and the time is a very interesting thing that we don't notice until maybe if I start leading us to think about it, because this something, the time, everydayness, right? Why everydayness become boring to a lot of people, because over a period of time it's being repeated, so it seems like lacking a certain value. Okay, yet here we have two artists trying to, you know, shift our gaze and say, look into this, right? Now I asked that question with one of the an audience question in mind as well, because this is actually directed to Ezzam from Nicholas Ryan Lee, right? It's quite similar in a sense. What is the inspiration of using your own body parts in your works? Were you inspired by someone? Something the idea just came to you naturally. So perhaps, Izam and Ghazi, tell us about why do you guys want to work with things so mundane, yet you see the possibility to transform it, right? And the whole idea of time, perhaps it means something. Okay, I don't know. This is what I'm trying to elicit up here, all right? Okay, go ahead, guys. Let's see what you have to say.
Izam, the
Ghazi,
question yours first.
Ghazi, Ghazi.
No. It's yours
I,
first.
I think that's a very very relevant question to our both our practices. For me, I can only speak on behalf of myself. A lot of my works are autobiographical first, right? So, inspiration come from everywhere. Inspiration come from conversations that I have with my mother. Little cracks on the wall while waiting for the elevator to arrive. Um, a plastic bag. Oh no, nah, cannot. Plastic bag twirling, that is already like American Beauty. Cannot. Overused reference already. So, so I think, and again, like just now when Ghazi mentioned like, oh Izam, thank you for the performance, and even everything is performative. Our actions, gestures, actions are performative. Um, and sometimes we neglect all those little actions, right? Like walking, we take it so for granted to a point that like sometimes we didn't realize that our ankles are giving way, right? Or like you are stretching your arm trying to reach out something. Yeah, you are stretching your arms up. The action of stretching your arm up is so it's just an action. You don't think about it. But when you exaggerate it, when you amplify it, when you minimize it, so all this became little pockets of information for me, especially for my live performances. In terms of presenting all these ideas and all this inspiration, i I think for me, I would rather be honest with myself. There are so many things that as an artist you can tackle. There are so many topics that you want to tackle, right? And I don't want to be dishonest to my practice in terms of like, oh, let's talk about global warming or whatever it is. And if I'm not, I mean, like, as much as like I try to minimize my waste, and in my art making I try to reduce, right? Like I'm using literally my own skin to make art, my own skin, and not buying materials, right? Not buying external materials. 80% of my works are of my body, but we are also still waste maker. So these are the things that like in a bigger aspect, when you can actually break it apart, and it actually falls in many different categories. You want to talk about time? Yes, Ezzam Rahman's work is about time. You want to talk about decay and breaking down? It also talk. You want to talk about like the personal and the body also. So there's so many ways of reading an artwork. There's so many ways of looking at it. So therefore, for me, inspiration comes from everywhere. I and I try not to. Of course, in my earlier years, like my first few years of practicing, I try to like, okay, do something. And of course along the way, and when I look back at my practice, I say like, hey, you have always been interested in time. I think we live in metropolitan cities. Both of you live in KL. I live in like I live in Singapore. Singapore is a metropolitan city. It's super fast. Everything is super fast. And therefore sometimes how does one slow down? I don't meditate. I cannot sit down and like 35 minutes. I think like I close my eye already, either I go to sleep or I get very agitated. And if you notice also, like the way I present and the way I talk is super fast, right? It just comes naturally to me. It's because that my body has been conditioned towards within the atmosphere or within the surrounding. And when I went for example, just an example, when I went to Iran for a performance festival in 2017 and I'm surrounded with nature, I felt very uneasy. I was so uninspired because it's so foreign for me, right? And I had to perform in nature with trees. I had to climb mountains. I had to climb hills, rocks everywhere, mud in my ass. I mean, like mud on my pants. So, so there's like it's just so jarring and it's uncomfortable for me, right? But I have to also condition my body and react to the spaces. So this is where I'm coming from. Inspiration can come from anywhere. Ghazi?
I totally agree with Izam on one part that I think even my works, a lot of them are autobiographical. Uh, because even in temporary visa, I face the same problem as Jakob. Same goes to Doama, I face the same problem. And choosing someone to document themselves to get attracted to them itself is because I find there's a certain connection. Thus, the autobiographical element comes in. I was inspired by Pedro Almodovar film, a quote which says that anything not autobiographical is just plagiarism. I mean, we may be disagreed, and I just hold to it. To me, I enjoy time a lot, a process. I find art making itself, especially in filmmaking, where it takes a lot of time. To make a film, it takes like 2 to 3 years. I want to condense it even more because I think that with time there comes the idea of reflection. And I can make small pockets of smaller artworks, but it's something that I have to understand through these smaller pockets, or like we call markets. Markets, we try to understand before we can create something larger. Even when you create something larger, I don't see myself as the master of that. It's still a learning process. So for me, I love. I think it comes out from like the idea of slow cooking. When you cook a beef stew, the longer you cook, the better it gets. The better observation I get because it's very difficult for me to say this because I I want to go to on set to instruct my actors. I need because when my actors they will ask me questions. What do I do next? What is this? What is this? Even though to make even things more difficult, they are non-professional actors. I love to work with that non-professional. They will have thousands of one questions. So I need to go on set knowing I know most of the answer. And in order for me to know most of the answer, I need to observe a long period of time to reflect on this. So for me, like for instance, right now, I when I came back from when I was in Sarajevo, it was a big change for me because of the way people live there. In Singapore, it was a very fast pace, and in Sarajevo, I I went to some residencies in Indonesia, and I thought that was slow. In Sarajevo, that imagine 10 times slower than Indonesia. I'm not saying the country is slow, but it's just the pace of life is very, very, people appreciate life. When I put in my social media, while I was in Sarajevo, I have one plan, which is to go to the grocery shopping center to buy grocery. And I didn't do it. And people say, don't worry, it's okay. You're moving too fast. But where else in Singapore, you have to, or Malaysia even, you have to do so many things. So when I came back, another project that I'm looking for is to understand how we stretch time. So I did another piece of work called, oh my God, I forgot my name of my artwork. It's 143 minutes of just a documentation of how slow things happen in Woodlands. Woodlands is a place in Singapore, north of Singapore, where I live, and it's very slow compared to the east or the center, and it's just made out of 20 shots, and each shot is 8 minutes. People are forced to sit down to look at kids playing at the playground. I want to slow people down. And then now slowly I'm trying to understand social media. So the fastest pace of social media right now we can see is TikTok. So I want to challenge it. So now the most you can upload up to 3 to 10 minutes in TikTok. Yes, I upload. Is it
Seconds,
how many
seconds, not
seconds?
minutes, seconds.
No, no, no. Now you can in the story you can upload 3 minutes.
Oh, really? Okay, I don't have TikTok
Yes.
lah. Sorry, sorry. I'm not like
So
you. Like
I
go toot toot toot.
no, 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 no. So I will frame my curtains moving, and for 3 minutes that's it. And I will frame let's say my water boiling, kettle boiling for 3 minutes. So I named the TikTok the poetics of movement. So it's Ezzam says, like I said earlier, it's just smaller pieces of work that accumulate my understanding to perhaps attempt a bigger work.
And also going back to when you mentioned about TikTok, right? It's like we are conditioned to move very fast, and information needed to be capsule sized and easier for us to digest. And therefore, as artists, it's also our role to kind of like slow down, calm down. Okay, now like because right now everything is too fast. Like you swipe left, you swipe right, you just see the face you don't like, you swipe left, so if you understand the reference, but but this is where we're coming from. I think like as artists, it's also deliberate for us to give objects a second look, to give situation a second look, or like Ghazi really, like we are looking at the world through Ghazi's lens. Yeah.
I think that's interesting in a sense that because in a way both of you addresses the idea that how temporality, okay, is either condensed or stretched out in the and I think I'm still fascinated by the whole idea of Isam, you are harvesting something that takes a few months to dry off, and maybe you speed it up by using some chemical and things like that, and dealing with decay and things like that. I think this is where I want you to both of you to start thinking about, in the sense that, and somehow Isam actually alluded to, is that your artistic material and your process, the medium itself, allow artists to actually resist the conventionality of how social media or technology actually dictate how stories should be told, how image should be looked at, how something which is not a conventional artistic material, because of the way it's being displayed with lighting, with how it's being curated, and the information reverse. The whole idea of that I think is very important, because I want to bring us back to more create discussion of creativity in here, right? This is a academic institution event after all. And this is to link to one of the question again coming from the audience. Zentan have this question for Izam as well. I think, and this applied to Ghazi, because in a different way. Because the question goes this way: in your opinion, do you think your performance arts can be translated to any other medium, books, photography, videography, in order to capture and convey the same banality level as your performance art? And I suppose we can actually extend that to other themes that you were thinking about, or for me, I was thinking about the idea of temporality, right? Um, does it work for Ezam? And I think I can also direct this to Ghazi. You're very comfortable in a sense with the camera, but it takes a long time for you to really work with your subject matter. But would you think otherwise? Would you act otherwise? Whether in with the tools that you're working, or even your technique of researching. Okay, would you think different ways or different things to do in a sense to answer to respond to Zen's question, right? Perhaps Izam, go ahead, and let Ghazi, filter this a bit.
I think in terms of performativity, it can be presented in many different ways. That's where I'm coming from. And especially for someone who has been practicing this art genre for at least more than 15 years, there are many strategies where artists uses performativity um, to convey certain ideas. Like in my presentation, you can see the shift from live performance to performance for photograph as a still image where I perform for the camera, right? And to a point that like I'm performing for the camera again, but captured through moving images. And again, I take control of what I want to show. Um, I like when the question was asked about can performativity be translated into books. Actually, there's an artist from UK by the name of Joshua Sophia, and he created performance every day. And it's actually a literal book where he compiled actions, or he it's almost like an instructional performance. Every day you flip a page and there will be just one instruction: cry in front of a mirror. You don't even have to do it physically, but you can already imagine the performativity of a body crying in front of a mirror. And then the second page is stir your teacup 10 times anti-clockwise. Again, the idea of reversing or doing something that is, again, a mundane action, but in being directed through words. So there's so many ways of looking at performativity, right? I hope that answered the question. Ken?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think yes. No worries. I think at least Izam, you actually point out that there are artists who actually think about it or work experiment with it in different way. How
Yeah.
about Ghazi?
Yeah,
Come,
Ghazi.
Ghazi.
Yeah, usually films is often, watched and that became the final product. And we don't have a lot of time to defend it other than just the synopsis. And I'm very blessed that whenever I show temporary visa, I have in festivals, I do have the opportunity to explain my creative process and journey. And often people, they love the journey. And right now, entering the academic world, knowing a lot of my films or the way I make films, intention is from a very anthropological perspective. I've always thought that perhaps it's time for me to play a little bit more focus towards the journey of making the film. So, for instance, like say, if I document a book of a study of 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 perhaps the two lead actors, going through, what does he do? It can go from a very scientific audio recording. This is how he eats. This is how he portray love or whatever it is, and then leads to my film, and the film becomes an artwork by itself. And the journey of understanding this becomes booked or documented in whatever format. At least I have both documented lah. So I do see the need, because right now everything happens in my mind. It's a slow process of 3 to 4 years understanding it's only in here. And I think it's a beautiful process if I can actually translate that in images, words, and then book it into, I won't say a production book, but it became like a Bible before you watch the film. Yeah.
Well, I think I was when Ghazi, when you were presenting earlier, I was thinking, all right, the whole your process is actually rather ethnographic in the
Mm.
sense that you actually uh, prioritize or you try to champion the
Yeah,
idea
and
of
perfect.
being
Yes.
a removed observer, although you are
Mm.
in present. I think also,
Mm.
and so it's a very interesting ethical position that you have the whole in tandem with the your actresses that you're working with. But I think,
Mm.
and I think that is where some of the differences between Ezzam's and Ghazi's actually, and how you deal with this material that comes from our everyday body and our our mundaneness of life. One is actually autobiographical, but I think Ghazi is interesting because the ethnographer will never admit that there's actually there's the biographical side of it because you're always
Mm.
behind the camera, but yet it's always
Yes.
reflected. But I think it uh, it will be useful for us to actually go back to one of our initial strategy that which is to I want to invite Ghazi and Ezzam to comment on each other's practice because I think a lot of people don't know our both panelists actually speaking of temporality have known each other for a long time, and I think that is very important because, and that is where that's why they gel so well in the way they speak to each other, and I think that is very important also for us to come up front and say okay, why this actually seems interesting. So perhaps I think uh, before we really go to our finale wrap up for this session, I think this is a good opportunity for the bromance to come out, to talk about how you actually understand each other, how do you see each other deal with their important core values as an artist, as a filmmaker, how you actually both coming from Singapore, and I think your understanding of time, duration, and pacing is actually very different. Perhaps a critical assessment of each other, I think, would be interesting as well. That what you learn and what you see different in that sense. But perhaps to begin that, you have a share with us how long you guys know each other actually. Bang Ezam?
Ghazi is actually 15 years older than me, so
No.
sorry, very loud. Yeah, so I'm 15 years younger than Ghazi, so
No.
no, we were actually from the same elementary school, so I'm 2 years older than Ghazi, and yeah, I mean, like like in primary school we don't mix like levels, so I just hang out with like my level. So but I've seen him around, and I mean, like, we live in the same area. We live in the north side of Singapore, and then and our friendship kind of like got rekindled when we were both serving our national service. Yeah, and Ghazi was about to leave national service, and I just entered national service, so I took over his position, in the same department when we were serving our national service, at Civil Defense Academy. Yeah, what
And how
Ghazi?
about the comment about the understanding or the approach of the notion of banality or everydayness or mundaneness? I mean, in each other's work.
I think when I met Ghazi was an aspiring filmmaker, and back then he was very much into uh very TV
Commercial.
RTM stuff, very commercial films, I do not want to shade any films lah, but like, yeah, a lot of the films that he like I kind of like cringe a bit, but now he's cringing at the kind of films that I like. So we have that understanding of like taste with each other. But he
Mm.
knows that like I graduated from the South. I was a sculptor, and even while serving our national service, I told him like, hey Ghazi, I'll bring you to an exhibition. Let's go to the substation, let's hang out, and let's do this, let's do that. And then after that, uh then that kind of like sparked Ghazi's interest towards the arts also. I don't know, but you have always been good in filmmaking. Yeah.
I think just to add on at this point, before we critique our own works, each other's work, I think I'm very blessed, and I urge everybody, find someone you're very close to, even in the arts world, because be very good friends with them. It's hopefully somebody from a different medium,
Mm.
because I enjoy our friendship, both outside art and inside our art circle, because both of us were able to critique or to able to share bounds ideas, even though whenever, like, let's say Izam have even the simplest idea without having to even develop it, or same goes like me, we can easily share. And because of our many years, there were no sugarcoating. Often
I
I
think
will
that
tell,
honesty, that sincerity, that
yes,
it's good to have that harshness against each other. I mean, like, well,
yes.
I remember when I first dabbled into video art, and like I said, Ghazi, I have this beautiful idea about reincarnation, and I wanted to, like film just objects. And and my lens is through the visual arts, right? So I wanted to like have a kettle pour water, and Ghazi said like, but it's so boring. There's nothing there. I said, no, 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 no. You have to understand. You have to assist me. And and at that time, I do not have a proper camera, and Ghazi has a proper camera, so he had to help me. So, but the similar thing also, like when Ghazi kind of like has any idea, like he wanted to realize, he will also share with me. And that's, it's very unguarded. It's a very unguarded environment. We created this. um there's no tension. I mean, like, of course there's tension in any relationship, right? But like that, but creatively, we we respect each other's medium, we respect each other's craft. And also, when we critique each other, there is, we switch off. I switch off my like filmmaker's point of view, and I go to the visual arts. And then Ghazi will do the same thing too. Yeah.
And knowing, positioning ourselves as, being minority in a country, or even, being, in this, how do I say, being fat, being marginalized,
Plus size, plus
uh,
size,
plus size, okay, sorry,
plus size.
plus size. We share a lot of common topics, and
Similarities, yeah.
similarities, and
Discrimination, right? What struggles, obstacles, yeah.
and often, like, it brings us, I guess, in the earlier days, of our friendship, our works are totally different.
Very
But
different.
slowly, because of this, I guess, I do not know whether to call this twinning process, where we become like a twin, in different mediums. We slowly, our point of view become, I won't say united, but
But
it's
in line,
similar,
yeah,
in
yeah.
line, in
But there's
different
definitely
mediums.
overlaps. There's definitely
Yeah.
overlaps. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm not sure how to critique, but because we've gone through a lot of period of time, I've learned a lot from Izam, especially the idea of, slow process making. I've seen how Izam developed, uh, 10 years of his skin series before he can even get that, that flower. And to me, I wow, that 10 years came out, that as a friend, as an artist, I saw the beauty out of it. I adapted it in my work. So I don't think that it's common. It's to us, all our degree of understanding or our knowledge became communal for both of us, and we just share with each other.
And we find successes in little things. It's really not
Mm,
about, awards or recognitions, but it's really about um the satisfaction of completing a work, and not moving forward, but to also push each other to do better, greater things. Like if Ghazi has an idea, and then like I say, but are you sure you want to do that? Like, so that honest criticism, which is sometimes lacking in groups of artists. um and especially right now, like, art making can be isolating, but a lot of artists do find solace in being alone, right? but
mm,
but like what Ghazi said, it's good to have a group of friends that you can really trust and have built that relationship over time. And yeah, yeah, I think for me, I definitely enjoy Ghazi's works now more than when he was a student in ADM. Sorry, yeah, honest. Sorry, sorry,
I
because
found my way, ma.
of course, no. Back then,
Yeah.
you were trying so hard to tell stories, but now
Mm,
it just comes fluidly, so unguarded, and free. And 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 one thing that I like about your work is that like you are telling stories that people don't want to tell.
Mm,
And why not? Right?
mm,
We had this conversation about like you highlighting a 60-year-old lady climbing up a flight of stairs, but that person became significant through your lens. And
mm,
we were moved. We became acquainted with that imagery. So we became part of that person's life too. And
mm,
and I think those kind of like vision through an art maker uh, that can actually direct the audience way of looking,
mm,
that makes the work successful sometimes. But again,
mm.
it's very hard to measure success, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I
Certainly not.
totally
Yeah. Ghazi, go
I
ahead.
totally I totally agree with Ezzam's. We don't celebrate success in you've won that award. We appreciate each other's work. So often when I finish a film, it's very common for Ezzam to hey, pass me a DVD of it. So he has
Yeah.
a lot of
I have
collection
a
of
lot
my
of
work.
his all of his work in DVD. Still in DVDs, huh? Still in DVDs.
Yeah,
And
so like when a lot of my hard drive after making 50 plus over films, a lot of it are not archived. So Asian Film Archive is trying to archive it. At least Ezzam has some copies. And I think that
remember when
every
you when
work,
you fried your hard drive?
yes, all gone.
All
Artists are
gone.
very like we don't care kind of thing. Oh, never mind, we can make new. But we celebrate works. Each of us we have our own favorite works of each other.
Yeah.
Like for me, I really love Isam did this very I won't say ugly, but to me it's beautiful. A
Rude.
sculpture of a fat naked man. It's very like a
Ah,
small miniature and facing the wall of the galleries. And I've told Isam, I love that work. We celebrate it. It doesn't mean that that work is not celebrated. We ourselves understood the process that one has to go, and we celebrate each other's pockets of achievement.
yeah.
Great, great, great. I'm really having fun. I think this is more than a dialogue, but I think we have to certainly also and it somehow just a well, not just like all relationships, some relationship or time have to come to a halt at times.
Mm,
But I think also I want to bring this back to the whole Rombak discussion. I think is interesting why we thought this would be interesting for a visual artist, contemporary artist, and also a filmmaker sharing and talking about their approach, okay, and some of their themes, okay, something to do with banality. I mean, that is actually just an anchor point for
Yep.
our discussion and how it actually become an important catalytic for your process, creative process, and it is just an anchor point for us to talk about what kind of knowledge actually artists actually create and how is it interesting and how can it be significant to think about. But the more I listen to both of you, especially the last 10 minutes when you actually talk about that kind of relationship that you have and how the kind of the sense of conviviality that you have, I want to change the title of the talk from banality and catalyst. I think it's actually about the ordinary as as sustaining creative practice. It's something very ordinary. It's something in a sense just two friends who grew up together but develop a kind of maturity and appreciation through critique, through asking hard questions, not in front of us, but to each other honestly, and yet able to sustain that practice. I think that is actually much more important by saying, wow, banality as a
mm,
catalyst, but the ordinary of relationship, the very ordinary thing, and how we actually transform through long observation that Ghazi has done, through the way that Islam in transforming, changing them, allowing to decay, allowing it to achieve immortality in a museum, whichever way, right? But I think that is what I would like um, our audience to get away from to get out from this discussion, because this is what I think we are talking about in a sense. Why are we reshuffling? Okay, what is Rombak? What is being Rombak here in that sense? No, we want people to see that you can make something interesting, poetic, something very critical, a critique or critical, something very sharp from something that is ordinary, you know, and that demands a lot from our artists. That demands a lot from an ethnographer uh, to embed oneself into that process to tease out that ordinariness and make it interesting to others to see. Oh, that is how relationship works. That is how connectivity perform. You know. Okay, seems like I got my 5 minutes wrap up here. I hope that is agreeable to both our panels. That I mean, this is
Yes.
something that
Yep.
a good journey to where we spent for the last 1.5 hours. You know, and perhaps Ezzam and Ghazi, would any last words before we break off? I know you
Smile
shall. I
always.
think both of you will continue talking. So
No, Salbin, thank you so much for moderating this talk. Thank you for having me, to be very honest, to both Kazi and Salbin. I know you for a long time too, sir.
yeah,
And I've known your practice too. So there you go. I mean, we're talking about ordinary lives and still continuing as artists, as makers. Um, Sometimes we can lose track, right? But like we have been in this industry for so many years, and yet we are still in this industry, still fighting, still showing, still questioning, still making and trying to make change, and that is important. And therefore, to like my last words for anyone who actually stumble upon this talk or listen to us throughout the whole an hour and a half, um, thank you, thank you, because you spend time with us today. And thank you, Ghazi, for your friendship after so many years. I can't wait to go back to KL. I really miss Malaysia. I need to go and visit my father's grave in JB. It's been 2 years already. So yeah, I mean, like wherever what city we are in, we're all still home in many different ways.
I'll speak from an educator's perspective. Yes, but I can't wait for Izam to come to KL so we can reunite after so many years. Um, I think whatever we have mentioned or where Izam and myself have shared are all the success. And behind this 5%, what we are trying to celebrate the success comes like 95% of mistakes. And what there's to me, there's no right way. There's there's no also way of like trying to copy what is good from other artists or what it is. So I know a lot of some of my students are listening to this. I would say go and make your own mistakes. And that is more important because only then you'll be able to find that 5% of success that people can celebrate, your own success.
But remember lah, mistake also money, kan?
Yes.
That's reality too. I love what you say. Sorry, coming from an academic point of view, also as a lecturer too. Remember, you make too many mistakes, it's also money.
Yes. Expensive mistakes.
That is your motto, Ghazi. That is your
Yes.
motto. Yeah.
Yeah.
oh, I think we should end with this. But one of actually Ghazi's important motto is buy less T-shirt and make more
Make
film.
more
Actually,
films.
which
Yeah.
Yes.
he has asked me to admit it from the text. But with this,
Yeah.
thank you very much to both our panelists, Ezzam and Ghazi, for the Rombak Dialogue 2 session. And of course, I wanted to say thank you to my colleague, Mr. Tamin, who has been endlessly working on and mending everything behind, right?
Thank
So
you.
we will have a next session at 8 p.m. Together, I will speak with Coxie Y, my colleague from the Faculty of Creative Multimedia, who works in video performance and also a very important curator and organizer of experimental film in Kuala Lumpur. together with formerly a Fulbright scholar who visited FCM, Dr. Chris Fanghauser from New Jersey Institute of Technology. So they will be actually having a conversation titled Everyday Life and Creative Practice.
Ah,
So see all of you. Thank you very much.
thank you.